We are back with Juliette Peters, unpacking the future of female entrepreneurship. Now, Juliette, we've had an incredible conversation up to this point. We're talking about how the female entrepreneur is really beginning to create a space of their own in the marketplace. The trends, we're seeing an increase in female business ownership and even a gravity towards that. Now, a couple of things come up for me is I see that the technology has created an environment where it's easier maybe for females to do that, both because what they can do from home, work from home models, the ability to create a little bit more maybe balance between
Yeah.
the load and the looking after kids and probably looking after husbands as well. I know at least in my household that happens.
And parents.
Yeah, all of it, right? So I feel like that's probably a little bit of a cultural connection that's making some of that more possible. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that and really start talking about how you're assisting and helping the people that you like to serve to raise them up with the right mindset so that they can tackle the world in the new world.
Yeah, so for me, I'm really in the exploration space. This year, I'm starting a podcast myself, really designed to highlight the stories of women who are doing amazing things in the community, but those stories may not be out there, right? Because they're siloed, they're working in their particular area. So that's one thing. The second thing is I'm working on coaching and training. Particularly, I would like to provide a link between more experienced women and younger women. The tricky thing about forced mentoring, right, is it doesn't really work. So we have that's one thing I'm working through. Like, what does that look like? I think that cohorts, mastermind groups for women business owners are critically important. I don't see women entrepreneurship slowing down. And I think, as you mentioned, it's going to pick up. Again, I don't want to force all women into, listen, you got to crack the 7-figure thing or you're leaving the 98, or 97 point whatever percent of us in the lurch, right? That's not what I'm saying. I think it's amazing that women see a need and fill the need. And whether or not they want to grow it or not grow it doesn't really matter. But I want women to get the education they need around money and financial stuff, and setting up their QuickBooks from the get-go, keeping their, books and records clean, paying themselves first, using systems that are out that are proven that don't have anything to do with women or men or just systems in general, right? Find one you like and apply it from day one, right? So I see that idea of women's entrepreneurship really taking hold. I don't think we're going to see that lessening. And I think the more it gets a little crazy out there, the more women are inclined to do that, because you hit a really important point, which is one of the things I never appreciated until I started my own business was the flexibility. Now, do I work harder and longer hours probably than most, employed people? Likely, because, as you know, running a small business, you're wearing 17 hats, right? So that can wear you down. But having said that, if I got to take a parent to an appointment, or I got to take a kid somewhere, right? Or pick a kid up, I have the flexibility to do that. And I think the one thing, and I don't care if it's women or men, I think one of the things that you're seeing is, after the pandemic or during the pandemic, we cracked that independent working thing open. And despite all of the push this year to have everyone go back, genie back into the bottle, that's not happening long term. I really don't think so. I think people are going to find a way to make work, live around work, not make work their life. I just don't see that going back. I may be an outlier on that, and I'm sure that's not what the commercial real estate brokers want to hear. I'm just saying that I think that's, and that's even more important for women, because they do have all of these other things they're in charge of and carrying the responsibility for, and they cannot it's so much easier for them to work their own businesses than it is to have to be somewhere from 8 to 5,
Well,
right?
I'm an outlier with you, and I have to concur. And I've been working, from a virtual model, but for the better part of a decade. In fact, probably greater than a decade. And so I 100% agree. And I think that if you just recognize how much time people waste driving on the road in traffic, the fumes, the stoplights, the frustrations, and like all the things that get in the way that become part of the bother that exists in your life, you can eliminate almost all of that by being able to work from home with a strong internet connection, which is really powerful. You talked a lot
Absolutely.
about networking groups
Yep.
and that model. I really love that model, by the way. And as an idea, one thing that we do with our clients, we have quarterly group coaching sessions all over Zoom
Mhm.
that we do. And we invite
Yep.
all of our clients to attend, and we have a few different core topics that are led by different members of our team. But then we always facilitate breakout rooms. One of the
Mhm.
beautiful things about the technology is you can do that. And it's a really
Yep.
great way to create those connection points, build rapport with one another. And I could really see you having a mentor hot seat and doing that once a month with groups, and having somebody come in that you think is a mentor, developing a
Yep.
list of those people and having
I
them really
love that,
facilitate that.
actually. I'm
I think
writing that down. That's a great idea.
be
Thank you.
because you're out in you're in the Arizona area, and
Right.
although there's a lot of female entrepreneurs and around there, you're limiting by that geographic space, and your
Right.
vision for helping people is greater than that. So that's how
Right.
we can take the technology and the impact and really start to escalate it and put a 10x on the end.
Yeah, I love that. I actually really love that. And I do think that we have to start talking about these things, and really, kind of cementing that, in universities and younger women, because I mean, I do see women. I was working with a female photographer last week, young woman. She not completely brand new, but she's, mid 20s, right? And she's like, she's uncomfortable with the notion of just joining a random networking group. And I
Mm,
said, I get why you would be uncomfortable, but also let me tell you, there is none of you in a room, like in a professional room, if you're gonna be doing natural professional headshots, right? And you're not doing that, you're cutting out a huge amount of the business that, you could certainly have just by being the only in that room. I mean, every networking group I'm in, from the smallest to the largest, there's hardly anybody in there younger than 35 to 37, right?
mm.
And that's a time for women too, because a lot of times they have school age children, and there are some impediments. But I still feel that, one of the things for Gen Z women who are at the beginning part of their career is that they have to push themselves out of their comfort zone on the phone and really kind of begin to establish in-person relationships. That's an important thing for them just in general, because they do struggle sometimes with that interpersonal, meeting skill stuff, which ultimately would hold them back, right, in their career. But if they force themselves out of their comfort zone a little, they're going to be, I mean, they would see success very quickly because there's just not those people in a room. So teaching young women like that how to fish like that, that's really important too.
The only way to grow is to get uncomfortable. And
Right.
something that I think would be, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this. Like I've had a lot of people on the show, and we talk a lot about modern technologies. Of course, AI is a big topic. I'm currently building
Absolutely.
several AI versions and clones of Richard to help support me in my own business. In fact, I have a great one that you can call and speak to. You can speak to AI Richard if you like. And
Really?
yes,
Oh, I love
and
that AI, Richard. That's awesome.
I've had very good feedback from AI Richard so far, and the people that have used it, I should say. But what's interesting is that you could have, I think it's a really powerful time because you can create or have access to. They already exist, powerful female entrepreneurs, present today and from the past, and their works, their books, their inspiration. There is
Yes.
already an AI clone of them that exists that a
Yeah.
person can tap into. So
Yep.
mentorship and having conversations, You could engage in a conversation. Imagine any female entrepreneur can engage in a conversation with you 24/7, Juliet, and
Yeah,
ask questions about your experience and how would you handle this situation, where they
yeah,
can do it in a freeing, liberating environment where there's
yeah,
no pressure and they can
right,
ask exactly what they want to ask the way they want to ask it. It doesn't mean that the AI is going to give them a perfect answer, but it gives them a
right.
tool to help with their thinking. That's where I
Yeah,
find a lot of people, entrepreneurs, are
that's really
using
good.
AI to
Yeah,
help support them. It's giving them an opportunity to engage in a conversation when there
yeah,
isn't somebody else there, when what you really need is just a conversation. You just really want to explore your own thoughts, and sometimes the best way to
absolutely.
do that is through the active conversation, much like we're doing today.
That is that's actually brilliant, Richard, honestly. That's the key, honestly, is actually verbalizing the head trash, right? What's going on in the head and working through how do you even make a decision? What are the factors that you think about? And how do you pull the information in order to do that? Because as an entrepreneur, the single hardest thing, right, is you're by yourself all the time. We don't always embrace failure, but failure is how you learn, right? So, I think that just because you try something and it doesn't work the first time doesn't mean that you didn't take away incredible lessons from that, and there are lots of women out there, that are willing to help you. So, I would say, really, just, find what your deep why and do whatever you want to do to move that.
Amazing. Love it. Thanks again for joining us on the program, Juliet. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you. For those of you tuning in, make sure you stay tuned for next week's episode where we continue to unpack the incredible journeys of inspiring entrepreneurs and how they're innovating into a brighter future.